some familiar names on the list and some new folks that I have not yet met. We're going to be possibly a big group today, based on the RSVPs. So if you wouldn't mind, just in the chat box, just introduce yourself if you're willing, and let folks know where you're joining in from. That would be great. The part of the introduction that Kate so graciously gave didn't really sort of describe that moment that I went through, that many of us on the call went through around last year, when the full intent of the administration, what they were planning for USAID, became clear and started playing out. I was really took the moment to look around and was struck in particular about where I saw some considerable lack of leadership and direction in the way that I wanted to see the country and the place where I was working going. And so this was a big part of my journey in terms of figuring out what was next for me, and wanting to play that play a different role in shaping the future that I wanted to be a part of. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with everybody here on the call today. I've been working with a number of clients, talking to dozens of former USAID colleagues, working with other coaches, and I have developed a sort of checklist, I would say, for lack of a better term. And so what I'm going to do today is, based on that, walk us through a couple of different elements of what I've developed. So I am going to, this is great, I'm seeing a lot of intros in the chat, and it's good to see a lot of familiar names, some new ones, people joining from all over. I'm going to pop into the chat, give me a second. Here, I'm going to put in a link to this document that I have developed, which essentially I'm going to walk through today and give a little bit of context and information on. So I was talking with Kate about this session. I'm going to try to pin this. Okay, go to the top. I really wanted to focus on, what can I provide that would be useful for this conversation, something that distills what I've seen and learned over the last year from others and from the work that I have done. And so I'd been using a sort of a different version of this, but for this conversation, I developed this one-pager, and it's roughly going to track with what I cover today. And we've got a lot of people on the line, so probably won't be as interactive as perhaps I'd hope, but we'll have time at the end for Q&A. And Kate has graciously agreed to keep an eye on the chat so that we can answer some of the questions towards the end of the session. So for the agenda today, like I said, I am going to cover this one-pager that I've developed. I'm going to start with the basics, looking at sort of the fundamentals of what needs to be in place for job searching or career changing in today's market. These are really the essentials. Then I'm going to talk a little about a bit about the importance of relying on community and activating your network. In the exploration of structure and mindset, I'm going to outline some compelling research and neuroscience around what we think is critical. And I'll speak to a little bit how we can change our thinking so we're not feeling so much like victims of what has happened to us over the last year. In the fourth part of the section of our conversation today, I'm going to introduce design thinking, which is a really interesting way to think about prototyping your next career move without the pressure of having to develop that perfect 5-year plan. And finally, I really want you to leave here not only with the one-pager that I've shared, but also with some actions, some small actionable steps that will bring together the concepts that I'm sharing with you. So it's a lot of ground to cover. It's a lot of people on the line. And I really hope that you leave this session feeling confident that you can make a shift and a change to be empowered on your next step. Now, there's no, I would say, true formula for finding a job in this economy. You know, I created this one-pager to try to help people, to help all of you on the line, but it's possible something in there you've tried and it hasn't worked for you. That's okay. You know, I'm hoping through the end of our discussion and in reviewing the document, there's something in there that you can take forward, one thing at least that you can put into action over the next few days. Now, before we get started, just some ground rules. I'm sure I don't have to say this, but obviously we want to create this space to be as safe and supportive for everyone on the call. So I encourage everybody to just be kind and open and curious. And so with that, let me move on to the next slide. All right, so before I dive into the content, I did just want to take a moment to reflect on and acknowledge that, you know, what happened to us at USAID was not only the normal trauma of losing a job, but it was the added trauma of how it was done, the illegality of it, the breaking of these contracts that I think many of us, and I'm talking more than just the physical contract, but the reliance on the expectation of government service and what we all agreed to when we signed up for this. And so I really want to just acknowledge that we've all had to experience that. And also, what I am seeing with a lot of my clients and colleagues is that in order to move forward, we have to work through that trauma. And what that looks like is very different for anybody. And what one person's journey and recovery doesn't look like another's. And so I want to make sure that I shared this because it really, and it's not in the one pager, but it really underscores, in order to move forward, we do have to work through what happened in order to have the right mindset to find the next thing. And we can't go back in time and change what has happened. The only thing we can do is move forward. And then the last thing I want to share, which I'm sure is not a surprise to anybody, is just also that need for flexibility. You know, one of the things I'm seeing a lot with my clients right now, former coworkers who are getting jobs, is that they have to be flexible in this job market around possibly location, salary, level. But what I like to remind my clients is that your next job isn't forever. It's just the next step to get you on your way and moving forward. So with that, I want to jump more into the first part of the checklist. And I'm not going to spend too much time here, but I wanted to get a couple of the fundamentals on paper so that people have these things to refer to. So if you aren't hitting these, then you do need to be honest about sort of where you are in these in each of these issues. You're not putting your best foot forward with the hiring managers and your potential new employers. So I would really encourage you to take a moment to be reflective on how solid your foundations are in your job search. You know, your resume needs to be really tight, thoughtful, 2 pages. If you're trying to pivot into a new sector, it's got to have the relevant terminology of the sector you are pegging. And it's got to be tailored to each job. And, you know, I know not everybody likes LinkedIn. It's not everybody's cup of tea, but it needs to be accurate and understandable to people who are checking it. Hiring managers will be looking at your LinkedIn when you're applying to jobs. This means time and attention. And there are professionals who can help you with both your resume and your LinkedIn. I am not doing that in my new business, but I do have a name of a great colleague who does that if anybody is interested. Finally, I did want to hit on AI. It is everywhere right now. I personally think Claude is the best option for resume writing. If you're not using it, you're missing out on a tool that can help you in this job search. I also like to remind people if they are using ChatGPT, you do have to, or AI, you do have to check every line. And it's a started product, not a finished one. And it's important to also, even if you're using AI on your cover letters, to make sure you're also trying to put a little personal effort into it so it's not seeming like it's canned. I have heard some of my colleagues have said, oh, I got this interview because someone said my cover letter sounded like it wasn't written by AI. So it's sort of a balancing act around, are you using AI to help you in efficiencies while also retaining that personal attention. The other thing in AI is it's a new skill, and if you're going into the market, you need to be able to show that you know how to use it. So not only I'm talking about using it to help you with your job search, but are you thinking about how you can use it to find efficiencies in your new job, or are there specific implications for AI in the sector in which you're going in, and are you knowledgeable about those? And there's a lot of free courses that you can take on all of those issues. So really encourage people to ensure that they are up to date on AI. And particularly for those of you who are trying to do some industry shifting, you really have to be able to articulate your top skills and translate them in terms of how they relate into the industry that you are looking for. Finally, a couple of tips that I give to clients on references. You should know ahead of time who the 3 to 5 people are who are going to give you a glowing reference. Now, one interesting thing a former colleague of mine did, which I thought was great, was that she actually provided her referees a referral guide because she was translating her experience into a different sector, and she actually gave her referees some information about how to write the referral. You want to make sure that everything is sort of operating at the top of where you can be because it's so challenging right now. Finally, I'm just going to end here with my note on interview practice. Um, I really recommend that you practice with a person. Now, getting that experience of speaking to somebody and having that feedback and not just sort of thinking about your responses in your brain is really critical. That person also should be someone who's willing to give you some honest feedback on how you've done in that interview. So I'm going to stop there. I see, Kate, you've got your hand up.
Hi. Is it possible to make the slide a little bit bigger? If not, as Bridget noted in the chat, you can also pop the slides out into a new window, and then you're able to zoom in if that works for you as well.
Okay. Thanks. If there are other questions, if it's...
I do see Leslie has a hand.
Yeah, Leslie, go ahead.
Okay, hi. Thanks so much for putting this together, and I really appreciate it. So when you're talking, the most important thing is your resume, your CV. And you said that, so I get kind of confused because, they have a lot of people out there that help to craft your CV, and you said, a very good person. But if you pay money to get the CV, sort of crafted in the, using the correct words to pass the ATS, how then do you, for each job, if you have to tailor it for each job, and I use Claude AI. So what's the sense of getting somebody to tailor the CV when you have to adjust it for each position that you apply for?
Yeah, I would say that you should be working with someone who's got industry experience. So it's not that you would ask them to tailor your resume for every job, but for example, if you're making a switch from formerly international development to the private sector to corporate, to work with someone who can help you with that translation. And once you've got this general language, then you can use that to apply. And I see we have one more hand up. Kathy, go ahead.
Hi, Elizabeth. Great to see you. Thanks for doing this session. One question on the references. 5, 3 to 5 is a good number. But what about using colleagues and potentially a former direct report as a reference? Obviously as appropriate, but what are your thoughts on that? Having the appropriate mix, but now they're no longer your direct report. So love to hear your feedback.
Yeah, I always like to go with a mix. Supervisor, colleague, direct report. It gives a good, excuse me, rounded understanding of who you are. So I would encourage that mix. Yeah. So let me move on. I know we have about half an hour left. I want to get through a couple more slides here. Let's see. All right, so the next thing I wanted to just underscore really is that community is key to getting through this moment. So one thing that I learned from another coach and always recommend to my clients is to identify 6 close colleagues or good friends, ask them, what am I good at? And can you tell me a story where you saw me doing that? So this is so important for, one, reminding us of all of the things that we are good at, which is really easy to forget given what happened to us. And all the things that we've went through, but it's also really good to gather stories for your cover letters, for your resume, for your interview. It gives a new perspective on perhaps some of the things you did, but have maybe forgotten about, or those things that really made an impact to the people you are working on. The other thing that I like to encourage clients to, and it comes from a book that I'm currently reading about how to live a meaningful life, is creating formative communities. So these are people who are outside your social circle, even outside your work group. And it's a group of people who can support you in your growth and development. So this could be as part of, finding a job, but it could be larger than that. I'm part of this group that was created by a coach that I met in the Georgetown program. And she calls it a Superpower Sunday, where we all once a month come together, somebody hosts. The agenda is we sit around in a circle and we share what our current superpower is and where we need help. And we just go around, and sometimes people have an idea about something to help with, and sometimes it marinates and we talk later. And then of course there's food and drinks, and it's a really nice way to make sure you are connected with people who are there to support you. I also really encourage clients to activate your network. And I know very few people like networking, but right now in this job market, it really is the key to success. You need to be able to set yourself apart from the 500, 1,000 other applications. This does rely on personal recommendations. This means you need to be strategic about looking at, okay, this is the job I'm really interested in. Who do I know who works there? Who do I know who's connected to someone who works there? Really be thoughtful about using that network that you have. But also be really intentional and thoughtful about the coffee dates that you are setting up. I like to encourage my colleagues, my clients, to think about what they want to get out of those coffee dates, even if it is just reminding someone that you're looking for a job, what your skills are, and your background in case something opens up. Just go in with a very specific goal. And, one of the things that some of my clients struggle with in asking for help, reaching out to the community, at USAID, I think we are all very good at helping a lot of people, but I think it's sometimes hard for us to ask help. So I'd like to frame it as this is a moment for you to ask for help with the intention of when you get that job, you're going to be able to pay it forward. And that seems to be compelling to a lot of my clients. So the next part here in the one pager is the importance of structure and mental fitness. We could spend hours on this alone, and I know there's a lot of great resources around resilience, but giving that structure to your day and prioritizing healthy daily habits are really the scaffolding that is going to help get you through this moment. I kind of get frustrated when people say, oh, it's a marathon, but not a sprint. It's not a sprint, because marathons are really hard too. We have to be taking care of ourselves through this moment. And so really take a look at what is your structured daily schedule? Are you blocking out your time to update your resume, worked on your LinkedIn profiles, or giving yourself a target for your number of resumes? I like to spend 20 minutes at the end of my week, just like a little wrap up and planning for the next week. I look at what were my accomplishments, what worked well, and what do I need to do next week to move the ball forward. So really taking that mindset that we would have had in our previous job and apply it to the job finding work that we're now doing. And then, of course, I'm not going to go into resilience. Like I said, there's a lot of great resources here, but it's so key to make sure you're eating right, taking that time to exercise, connect with friends and family, and prioritizing sleep. So one of the most important things that I did in my own career transition was like taking control of my own mindset. The beginning of last year, January, February 2025, that was real low point for me. I think probably for many of us, that I felt really like everything was happening to me. I had no control, no agency. I felt like, I felt like there was nothing I could do, basically. But what helped me was that shift on focusing on what I can control, not trying to move back time and, focus on what things were, but really thinking about, okay, from here, from now, what do I have control over, and then move forward from there. I really love this quote from Henry Ford, because it's not just a motivational speaker. It's really like how our brains filter reality. Because if we're talking to ourselves that we can't do anything and we're not able to, our brain is going to tell us and that bias. So this is where in my coaching, I do end up working a lot with folks on mindset change. What we tell ourselves really can hurt or help us. One of the things that I was constantly telling myself last year when I was considering making this change was like, at my age in this economy, I'm going to start something new. And this really stopped me before I could even try. And so what really actually helped me in moving forward on my mindset question was understanding that we can literally rewrite our brains. Our brains are autopilot to think the things that we thought for a long time, but we're putting in the attention to that, and we're able to move things forward. And so this just understanding unlocked for me an opportunity. And I put in the resources section in that one pager a link to an interesting podcast on neuroscience and change. And I encourage anyone, if you're interested in that, to take a listen. It's not easy, this process of rewiring brains, but it is possible. And there's a number of different frameworks for doing that. And so one of the frameworks that I like the best, and I have worked with my clients on and gone through the process of using it myself, is called the Positive Intelligence Framework. And again, I've linked in the documents to the website of this. And what I like about this framework, there's all this neuroscience research around, it's not the exact technical correct way to describe it, but essentially it's sort of the, when you're in the sort of red side of your brain, you're reactive, you are not at your optimal, you're in your autopilot zone. But if you can switch to the green side of your brain, sort of I think colloquially, some people have said sort of left brain, right brain, but that's not quite accurate. But when you can activate this other side of your brain, you're able to see more opportunity, come up with more creative solutions. You're able to empathize and to connect with people. And so there's a number of different frameworks around how to move from the side of the brain that is sort of holding you back versus the one that's opening you up to possibility. The one I like is positive intelligence. I like this one because it has simplified the neuroscience into something that is really easy to understand, and kind of frames it as rebooting your operating system. So if you can move to the side of your brain that is supporting you more than sabotaging you, then you can apply that to all of the challenges, whether that is sort of dealing with your anxiety, your stress, creating new mindsets and habits to support your job search or your transition. It's really an easy framework. It's also fundamentally based on something that you can really incorporate easily into your day-to-day. It calls them PQ reps, but essentially they're little bite-sized moments of presence and mindfulness through the day to help your brain switch to the other side. And this is a lot, I think, more doable than, I think the science is clear that if you're going to spend 90 minutes meditating a day, that's going to have an impressive impact on your mental fitness, but nobody really has, the time and the capacity in today's world to do that. So what this framework offers is something that is easy to understand, easy to incorporate into your life, and can help you across your personal relationships, your work relationships, and your personal well-being. So I wanted to introduce that concept as well. Finally, I wanted to move to introducing the design approach. And here, this book also really helped me, the book that introduced me to the design approach. It's called Designing Your Life by Stanford professors Bill Burnett and Dave Evans. And so again, this kind of relates to mindset shift, and it's sort of a new way of thinking about career change or job searching that moves from this idea of you have to have the perfect plan before you get started to you have to prototype, design, experiment, and learn through several steps to get to something that is going to be compelling. Now, the book is geared towards people who are currently in a job looking for a change, but the exercises and approaches can really be helpful and adapted to a lot of different contexts. It also provides good suggestions to complement and improve of approach to job searching. The things that I've really liked about this book is that it understands that there's no one right choice for anyone. There are a multitude of possibilities around which we can go. And so it provides more of a framework for navigating without a complete map, and sort of using what shows up and what you learn through your actions rather than waiting for certainty, which isn't going to arrive. It also lays out a couple of mindsets to bring to the career planning approach, which really resonated with me. Curiosity. You have to be open and curious about what else is out there and what could be a possibility. Two, bias to action. I think a lot of us really spend a lot of time thinking our way into and out of problems, but we really need to act to move forward. The fourth one is radical collaboration. And here, you are not alone. You have a community of people. I think the OneAID community is a great example. There's a lot of people out there, but you do need to ask for help, and that can be challenging. And then finally, need to reframe this moment from being unemployed to being explorers and trying to find data. So the other great idea in this book that I work with clients on is prototyping different ideas. So going back to that, there isn't one perfect career, but there are many possibilities. The frame in this book allows folks to explore those different possibilities, learn, adapt, and also be open to ideas that you couldn't even conceive of. So this idea of prototyping really draws from product design, where you build cheap, small prototypes before you invest in building a whole factory, hiring a big group to develop something. So the idea here is before you go all in on one plan, look for things that you can do to get information to see if this might be the right approach. Or the right path for you. They introduce this concept of life design interviews, where you're going into a coffee interview. You're not asking for a job, but you're asking for a story of, what is this this person doing that you're curious about, and what energizes them in their role? What does their job look like at a day-to-day level? So this is low risk data gathering to see if a certain career industry pivot might fit for you. And then also they talk about micro experiments. So looking at, can you volunteer for an organization? Could you take a small course online? Something to try the job before you buy it. There may be an opportunity for shadowing someone in a role for a day. With the job market as tight as it is, I know a number of former colleagues from USAID are spending some time volunteering. So not only can this be an entry point for new careers, but for people like us who are so mission driven, it also fills that value of service that I think compelled many of us to be working for USAID. So the other thing that I work with my clients on is the importance of taking small steps. At the beginning, even in the middle of any transition moment, it's easy to get really overwhelmed by the idea of huge change, all the things that you have to do. Even I sort of debated, well, do I put together this one pager of all of these steps? Would people get overwhelmed by all of these things? But this is why I really love this idea of Kaizen, this idea of breaking large change into small actions that are doable and manageable. The idea is getting a new career is so overwhelming, that thought. But the goal of sending 3 emails to people this week to ask for their feedback on when they saw me working at my best, that seems doable. Identify 2 people on LinkedIn whose work aligns with something I'm interested in. That seems doable. So I would say, try not to boil the ocean and get sort of paralyzed by all the things you can do, but keep making those steps forward and moving towards something that is going to move you to the next point. So there's a lot in the paper, there was a lot in the presentation that I've covered. I'm hoping that you heard something that resonated with where you are on your journey, and something that you would like to try out and do in order to move forward. But if you would ask me what I would prioritize, I would encourage three things. That connection piece is really critical. So if you have that time in the next week to connect to your community, to reach out to 6 people who you worked with, to get those stories of when you're working at your best, I would really encourage you to do that. It's so important to remember that you're very good at your job, and where we are now and in the job market we're in, it's not a personal reflection, and it's not a comment on your value. It is just where we are and where we need to move from. So the second thing I would encourage you, if you're interested in maybe doing two things, really think about what is that top negative narrative that you may be thinking, that you may be repeating to yourself, that may be getting in the way, and reframe it into something that's going to help you. Make your mind work for you, not against you. Figure out that thing. What I did is I wrote down my negative narrative, and I wrote down my reframe in a journal. And then whenever it came up in my mind, I just overwrote that neuro pathway, and it really works. And then finally, and this one is hard, I think. So if you want something that's really going to be a challenge, I would say look for the gift in this moment. And with so many negative things going on, it's going to be very hard. But finding the gift of, well, how can I make this the best thing that has happened to me? Or what can I see? The gift could be something you've learned. The gift could be the strength you've found in yourself to make it through. The gift could be that I'm seeing is there has been a real influx of some amazing skilled people at the state and local level in government, based on what is happening at the federal level. So whatever the gift looks like, I would encourage you to think about that as well. So I am hoping that this conversation has left you with something to take away, and one thing to do for next week. I know we have a lot of people on the line. I haven't really had a lot of Q&A time, but we can move to that next. Some key takeaways I have here wrapped up. Just sort of remember that you have agency to move forward. You can activate your network to help you and take some new actions. We have about 10 minutes for Q&A. Before we go into that, I wanted to mention a couple things. My email, I'm going to put this in the chat. Really happy to have a further conversation with anybody who is interested in continuing this conversation. I'm going to share my email. I've developed a 5-session career transition coaching engagement. If you want to talk to me more about that, I'm going to put in my calendar. I'm opening it up to anybody here on this call. 30-minute session to talk about anything that has sparked your interest today, or if you want to think about working with me. I have scholarship slots that I am opening up for former USAID and partner colleagues. So please feel free to reach out to me if you are interested in that. And that let me stop here. We're on time. We've got about 10 minutes left in our call today for any Q&A or comments. So I don't know. I've just put those two things in the chat box, but I've not been monitoring it. Kate, is there anything that has come up we need to address here?
Thank you, Elizabeth. So far, we don't have any questions in the chat. There were a few things that we answered. If anyone has a question, please just come off mute. And if you prefer to put it in the chat, please do that as well. Thank you.
Thanks. And if there's no questions, that's fine. We can end a little bit early. I know for those of us on the East Coast, it's close to 7 o'clock. And if you want to just reach out to me directly and talk about something that may have been unlocked based on this this quick presentation, I'm more than happy to further the conversation offline.
I can always ask you a question if no one else has one.
Go for it, Kate.
One of the things that I hear people say a lot is, how do I network when this has happened to all of us? It's our whole network.
Yeah.
How do we find jobs when there just aren't any? And I know you don't have probably the answers to all of these questions because those are hard ones. But maybe you could share a little bit of your insight around those ideas.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's really hard. I think on networks, I do encourage people, if they're comfortable, to reaching out to people on LinkedIn, even if they don't have a strong network. I have found that a lot of people are really supportive and understanding of the situation that has happened to us at USAID. And I have found not everybody, but so many people, when I kind of start with, I was a former federal employee working for USAID, and I wear it as a badge of honor, and it's also a moment that kind of unlocks, okay, this person that I'm engaging with, they're either gonna be so supportive or it's not gonna resonate. And then you kind of figure out, okay, this is a person who understands and wants to help. And so I do encourage people to do that. I would also say that there are jobs out there, and they are opening up, and I am seeing people get these positions. And it could be that if your brain is telling yourself there are no jobs, that could be one of those mindset issues to work on, because there are jobs, but it might require some flexibility, and it might require an opening up to different possibilities and different paths than you may have been considering before. And that flexibility is something that I was trying to underscore as necessary right now to get through where we are. The other thing I work with my clients with on, okay, well, where are the pathways that might align? And here, and I think I sort of glossed over this a bit in the presentation, and can do a bit of value work and thinking about, okay, if my values are working in service to others and supporting my community, and you name the values, then if you can break it down to those fundamentals, it opens up a wider aperture of where and what type of things that you can do, and the things that you can find meaning in. I think we were all kind of I don't want to say spoiled, but we were so lucky to have been able to be in this job and working for this agency where we were doing what we had studied for in school. We were working with great people. We were in a mission-driven organization that really fed our ability to be of service to other people. But there are other opportunities to hit those three things, and it might be just we need to look at what that looks like in a different context. And it could be, I know I've worked with some clients that could be wanting to go into nursing. It could be wanting to work at a very community level on, the climate impacts of the local watershed system. There are a lot of different ways to be able to find meaning in our jobs, but it's not maybe as easy, I think, as it was. And I think, when we were just, showing up to USAID every day, I think maybe I, for one, forgot about how lucky I was to be able to do that. So I hope that answers some questions. I don't know if more came in while I was talking.
We do have a few more. Thank you so much for that. These connect a bit. So those who are requesting written references from former supervisors, one participant has asked their boss a couple of times to write a reference, and they were great. Curious about whether or not it would be a good idea to get a general, not organizational specific letter of reference to reduce the number of times that we're asking the same people, particularly if they were also affected by the layoffs.
Yeah, I think for most of the jobs I've seen now, the references are either they have their own form that you fill out, or they need to reach out to the person directly. So sometimes I'm not sure if a letter of reference is really going to hit the target right now. I will say most people, I think, are very understanding in terms of where we are. Even if you're in the situation, you're probably as understanding as anybody else in terms of this request of multiple references. So I would say, this is my bias towards seeing the good in people. I would say just keep asking. They understand what's happening. They know what's going on, and I think they're going to be supportive of you.
I've definitely found that with my former supervisors as well.
Yeah.
We have another question around how we shift our mindset about rejection. We have guidance about, it seems employers are maybe taking advantage of the volume of job seekers and sometimes don't treat candidates with as much respect as we're accustomed to. How can we manage those experiences?
Yeah, so this one is really hard. And, I was talking with one of my clients in particular who, and this may resonate for some, for me it did. So when you apply to a job, you kind of have to become emotionally invested in that job. You have to see yourself in it. You sort of live through that moment of taking the job in order to build out that resume and become excited for the process of doing it. And so that movement even then furthers the sort of disappointment, right? When you don't hear back, if companies aren't responding to people, or you get, to the last interview in the process and you don't get the job. And so I think the best way that I've seen, and for everybody, it's going to be looking a little bit different. But if there's that way of treating these applications as, this is part of the process, this is what I have to do, this is my best step, but trying to really look at it as, if it happens, that's great. And if it doesn't, I'm learning. I got an opportunity to interview with another panel. I got a moment to put myself forward. I think it's about finding that gift in in the moment and not dwelling on, well, I'm so angry that the hiring manager can't respond to 1,200 applicants. I mean, the other side of it is, I mean, yes, I do think a lot of organizations are not, I mean, how hard is it to just like send one email, especially if things can be automated? But, you know, from the perspective of the hiring manager, that's a lot of applications to look through. That's a lot of people. And so, so maybe thinking about the different perspectives in the equation would be helpful, as well as, you know, what positive thing you can pull from the experience.
Thank you. We are at time, which my cat seems to be reminding me of. I don't see any other questions in the chat. There is a comment from Julia, a reference from a hiring manager, just noting that references are often useful to address lingering questions that hiring managers had during the interview, and a letter of recommendation would not serve the same purpose. So I think adding to what you were saying before about the answer to the question about asking supervisors for letters of recommendation.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Elizabeth, thank you again for taking the time to do this. It's been really wonderful to spend this hour with you. To those still on the call, thank you so much for participating. I'm also going to put the OneAID email address for me and the website into the chat. If you have any questions for me, if you'd like to offer any feedback, and of course, you can also find this on LinkedIn and social media, and hopefully you'll have a chance to follow up with Elizabeth in the future. And so thank you again. Have a nice evening.
Thanks, Kate. Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening. Bye.